Audio Jungle.
This is your End Time Prophecy Update with W. Dean Shook.
Welcome to this edition of Prophecy News Update. I'm your host, W. Dean Shook. This is an investigative report of abortion in China. Not just abortion, forced abortion. And the reason 200 million girls have vanished. The deadliest words in the world have been unveiled in a new documentary film about the reason why an estimated 200 million females have disappeared. And this story is a WND exclusive. This documentary is entitled, It's a Girl. Reggie Littleton, president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, was recently in Hong Kong for the premiere of a new project entitled It's a Girl. A campaign accompanying the movie offers viewers an opportunity to help save baby girls. Because only male offspring carry on the family name, millions of baby girls are aborted or killed after they are born in China and other countries. One woman in the documentary says, "I killed 8 girl children." The movie, which premiered in Hong Kong just days ago, represents a growing opposition around the world to forced abortions. Littlejohn said more people are aware of this crisis now, but some interest has been lost since China's Communist Party claimed last week that the forced abortion policy has been eased. Chinese officials said couples now will be able to have 2 children if either of the parents is an only child. Now, before the change, both parents were required to be only children. However, Littlejohn pointed out forced abortion remains in place. Regardless of the number of children allowed, women who get pregnant without permission will still be dragged out of their homes, strapped down to tables, and forced to abort babies that they want, even up to the 9th month of pregnancy, she said. It does not matter whether you're pro-life, pro-choice. No one supports forced abortion because it's not a choice. Even Chinese officials admit that change would have little impact. In an interview with WND, Littlejohn said it's important to show people the horrors that forced abortion policies create. Statements such as the recent one by Chinese officials are attempts, she believes, to distract people from the violence. Of course, they don't want people to know the brutal truth. The It's a Girl project is supported by Amnesty International. Littlejohn's remarks at the film opening were broadcast into China. She's testified on the issue before Congress, the European Parliament, the British Parliament, the United Nations, and the Vatican. She said, "I'm thrilled to come to Hong Kong at the invitation of Amnesty International and to speak at the Hong Kong premiere of It's a Girl." She noted the timing of her visit, just after China announced a modification of their one-child policy. She said, "I was able to discuss with the human rights community in Hong Kong that this is not a major step forward as touted by the media." She said, "Rather, it's a minor modification that will not end forced abortion or gendercide in China. We need to continue the battle to end these atrocities," she said. Littlejohn said that because of gendercide, an estimated 37 million Chinese men will never marry because their future wives were terminated before they were born. This gendercide imbalance is a powerful driving force behind trafficking in women and sexual slavery, not only in China, but in neighboring nations as well. Littlejohn explained the trauma forcing unborn baby girls in a report. It says, "For most of us, hearing It's a Girl is cause for enormous joy, but in many countries, this announcement is a death sentence. This should not be a pro-choice or a pro-life issue. This is a human rights issue. Gendercide is violence against women and girls. No one supports the systematic elimination of females." Now, Chinese data shows that 13 million abortions were performed each year for an average of 35,000 abortions a day. One field researcher has conducted that he's fairly certain that most of the 13 million annual abortions are forced. According to Stephen Mosier, most of the millions of abortions carried out in China have the characteristics of rape. That is, they were performed on women who were ordered or even physically forced to submit to the knife. And since 1971, doctors have performed 336 million abortions. They've performed 196 million sterilizations. 55% of all women in China have had an abortion, and 27% of women in their 20s, that's about 27.3 million women, have had an abortion. In 2000, more than half of all of the abortions in China were a result of parental sexual selection. One survey of 8,000 women showed that of those who had one abortion, 35% have another abortion shortly after the first one. An average of 8 million women undergo abortions every year in China. 8 million. Now remember, the abortion rate in America is 1.4 million, which is a genocide in itself. The abortion rate among women in China is 29.3%, which far exceeds the average level of other developed nations. In this population of 20 to 29-year-old women, the abortion rate is 62%. In Shanghai, Beijing, and other large cities, the rate of repeat abortion is higher than 50%. 50%. Regulations requiring women who violate family planning policy to terminate their pregnancies still exist in the 25th, 42nd, and 22nd provisions of the Population and Family Control Regulation. Well, some researchers have suggested that hepatitis is responsible for the high sex ratio. This is not supported by evidence. Looking at the 2000 census data, if a second child is a male, it will arrive, on average, 4 months later than a second-born female. This delay in birth indicates that there's human intervention, abortions, or infanticide taking place before the birth of a second male child. And what's the result of all of this? It's child trafficking. The one-child policy has led to a black market in stolen children. At least 70,000 a year. Kidnapped or stolen children, 70,000 a year. They're kidnapped. They're buying and selling children for adoption. And it's increased over the past several years. There were no reliable estimates of numbers of children kidnapped. However, according to media reports, as many as 20,000 children were kidnapped every year for illegal adoption. Most children kidnapped internally were sold to couples unable to have children, mostly sons. The Chinese government restrictive family planning is part of a Global Times article referred to as China's massive lucrative baby market. In some cases, family planning officials reportedly have coerced parents to relinquish their children born in excess of their birth quotas. They then take these babies and make a profit when transferring the children into the care of local orphanages. In other cases, individuals have abducted and purchased children for the purpose of subsequently selling them into domestic or international adoption and forced labor situations. Forced labor situations. China has a very skewed sex ratio. 118 boys to 100 girls, and it serves as a key source of demand for the trafficking of foreign women as brides for Chinese men and forced prostitution. And you know, with all of these abortions in China, around the world, there's an underlying tone here of eugenics. Now, in China, the eugenics is not an undertone. They're blatant. They're open about it. This is clearly eugenics and population control. But in the rest of the world, the whole free love movement from the 60s and 70s on has fostered the attitude that it's recreational And if the result is a pregnancy that you don't want, eliminate it. This attitude has formed itself in the form of eugenics, in the form of depopulation, forced sterilization. On the East Coast in the 70s, people like Margaret Sanger, other people who feel that there are groups of people who are not worthy to reproduce. They want to eliminate these, what they call, inferior people. Now, while people may make a big deal about women's rights, they may say it's a health issue, they can make all kinds of arguments, and they do. And some of these are arguments that sound very convincing, but they're all based on the same thing, that's eugenics and population control. All I can say is, the day is coming when we're going to have to account for the choices we've made in our life. What kind of choice will you make? I'm W. Dean Shook. Thank you for listening.
You can get these full stories and more at wdeanshook.com. That's wdeanshook.com.